On today's episode of Tusoka, we have Dr. Elizabeth Henry, also known as Dr. Liz. Liz, welcome to the show.
Oh, it's great to be here. Thank you for having me.
We are so excited to have you today and to really talk about parenting from your medical perspective. I mean, I think this is bread and butter for you and Candy, but I think it'll be interesting to see how this translates to the mental health aspect that I work with. So I'm really excited about this conversation. Thank you so much for joining us.
And I just want to let the listeners know that Liz and I were in the trenches together in residency back in the 90s. That's a long time ago. Yeah. So,
And it was in the trenches. It
oh
was
God,
really in the
Liz,
trenches
yeah,
for
we
sure.
need to have an episode
You
about
could
how
write a book
horrible
about that,
was.
right?
Yes. So, Liz wrote a book and it came out during the pandemic. It's called You Are Not a Bad Parent. And I think between the three of us, we have close to 75 years of parenting.
Right.
And I'm sure each one of us has wondered, what am I doing wrong? I know you
Oh,
have
I absolutely
called
have.
me and asked me, like, I don't know what I'm doing wrong. And I have to kind of let you know it's not your fault. And I have had moments where I tell Judy, I'm kind of embarrassed to tell you this, but, and then she's like, don't be embarrassed. Yeah.
So I think the bad parent idea is something that we always feel. And I think also because, these kids don't come with a manual. So we take them
Right.
home from the hospital and we don't have a clue as to what we're doing. And nobody is saying, this is what you do versus this is what you don't. Um, and we kind of make it up as we go along.
Yeah,
But
definitely.
I love the validation, Dr. Liz, because so many of us, are fearful, like, are we doing our children a disservice by doing this, that, or the other? And just the title of your book makes me feel like, okay, I'm doing the best that I can.
So, what was the
Yeah,
impetus to write the book, Liz?
well, I found as I was practicing for over 20 years that, as Judy said, parents came in, there's no guidebook, there's no one guidebook. And many people may be telling them to do different things.
Right.
So they're torn about what to do and how they should do it. And there was a lot of parental guilt,
Yeah.
especially when parents are working and trying to balance at home and at work. And even when you're in the healthcare profession, even if you're a healthcare professional like we are,
Yeah.
we're still feeling that we're not doing it right, or we should be doing it better because we should know how
Right.
to do it,
Right.
and all of that. So I felt the need and call to create a book to give parents the guidance that they were craving for when they came to a pediatrician's office or to the family practitioner. And I didn't have that time to give them in the 15 minutes allotted to them. So I felt that over the years, I created this transformational template and ways to connect parents with their young people so that they can communicate with love, compassion, and understanding, and give them a framework to go by.
Yeah.
So, first of all, I want to say that Liz's book, it's not a big book, it's not a difficult book, but it's a dense book. Every page has information and nuggets that you can, it's like organic chemistry. Well, where you read like 3 pages and it's so full of knowledge your head is about to explode. But with Liz's book, I found myself, like, first of all, wishing that I had it earlier on in my parenting. and kind of wanting to do a redo of certain flashbacks of conversation slash argument slash yelling that I did
Yes.
with the kids, but it was so chock full of good information. So I think, when I think of my parenting, I think about conflicts where
Mm.
I want things done one way and the kids I don't even know if they want it done another way. They just don't want to listen to me. Can you talk a little bit about why conflicts arise?
And it's not just about between parents and kids.
Mhm.
It's really applies to everyone. And I say in the book that conflicts arise, and this is what happens is that people want to be right
Right.
about their point of view, and we all have different points of view. We all have different perspectives. Even our young people, our teenagers, have different perspectives, and we all think our perspective is right.
Right.
And our goal when we communicate with each other is to prove that our view is right and yours is wrong,
Right.
and that is the source of conflict. So and so one thing that I say in my book is that it's important to understand that your young person, your teenager, has a different perspective. And all they want to, you don't have to agree with them, but their views are valid.
Mm-hmm.
And they want to be validated, that they're heard, that you hear them,
Absolutely.
that you understand what they're saying. And that is a part of the compromise, and understanding who they are is validating. Okay, I understand what you're saying, and it's valid. I may not agree with it, and I don't agree with it, so let's have a conversation about it, rather than saying that's absolutely wrong, that's
Mhm.
not right.
Mm-hmm.
Now, did you have to teach that to yourself? Because I I kind of was like, listen, I don't care. I'm paying the bills. Just do it.
I did. And
Mhm.
I was at fault. I would yell, and if Lauren, because Lauren is was yeah, Lauren, I have a 24-year-old daughter. She's my only child, and she's 24 now. And she was the complete opposite of me. She was creative and artistic, and not into getting straight A's, which
Mhm.
which I
I
that
know,
was
I know
me.
that was you. Mhm. Liz,
And
Liz went to Princeton for undergrad and University of Pennsylvania for medical school. So she's not a fly by night pediatrician.
and neither are you. Uh, so I had to go through the process of realizing that Lauren was not me.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
She was
Mm-hmm.
wired differently. She had a different personality. She had different passions. And I had to recognize who she was as a person, and what her talents were. And and I came to realize that my job as a parent was to nurture her talent,
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
not instill my desires and my passion into her. And once I recognized that for myself, there was still conflict,
Mhm.
but there was more understanding between us,
Yeah.
and less of a conflict.
I can absolutely relate to that because I know I have three. And for the longest time, I thought I knew what their path would be, right? They were going to be like their
Mhm.
mother. They're going to go to college, they're going to go to graduate school, and heck, they're going to go into a second graduate program. Why not?
Uh-huh.
And I think I know that that came from my parents, who really drilled into us the importance of education.
Mhm.
And I certainly did my best to instill that in my children. But at the end of the day, they have different desires than I do. And I know I modeled what a student needs to look like because they witnessed me going through a graduate program. But again, that did not necessarily mean that it was right for them. And
Yes.
my ability to let go of that, not gonna lie, it was a struggle. It was a struggle. And sometimes I still ponder that, like, ooh, I wish, but no, I can't because it's not their wish.
Yes. But I find it's also more fun. It's to see them flourish in their own way, right?
Right.
And for me to see Lauren, she's into film. She went to the University of Southern California for film school, and now she's a musician. So to experience that, which is far from what I do,
Mm-hmm.
and just see her thrive in her own element,
Yeah.
it's fun to see.
Yeah, I agree. I agree.
So, as parents, we make a lot of mistakes and sometimes have difficulty acknowledging the mistakes to the kids and
Mm.
apologizing. Tell us, I don't think I grew up with mommy and daddy ever saying they made a mistake.
No, I've never heard those words.
You know, I think mommy later in life, she has apologized, but growing up, if they were wrong, it's like they would stop talking about it, but they would never say, I made a mistake.
Mm.
And I don't know if that was the whole Jamaican thing, but I never heard that. And in Jamaica, we don't grow up with our parents saying, I love you. I don't think I heard I love you from my mother until she had grandkids. All of a sudden, she was the queen of I love you.
And you were like, who is
I
this?
know. I,
Oh,
I,
Did
she's actually
somebody
in
take
the
over
back.
my mother's body?
I
Right.
know.
She's in the background laughing
Yeah.
right now
So,
because she
so
knows that's true.
I would get cards, love mommy, but I love you. I love you. I love. I'm like, who is this woman? So how do we? And knowing that, I wanted to hear I'm sorry quite frequently. I have asked my kids for forgiveness when I have made mistakes.
Oh, I know I have.
And it's
Yeah.
so sweet because they would say, it's okay, mommy, I forgive you. And it was like, I mean, they were little, and I found them telling each other, I forgive you, because
Mhm.
I didn't want that to kind of be repeated in my generation when I was raising my kids. What's a good way of saying, I made a mistake, I'm sorry? Or is it as simple as just that?
It's as simple as just that.
Okay.
Is just saying, you know what, I was wrong when I said that,
Hmm.
and I apologize. I'm sorry, and I flew off the handle. I yelled.
Mhm.
I didn't mean to. I disagree with what you said, but I didn't mean to say it in that way.
Hmm.
Right.
And then it opens up the conversation. It doesn't. They don't shut down like that. And if you say something that you regret saying, a lot of times kids, and Judy, with your counseling, you may be able to speak more on this, is they internalize things. And they may make what you said mean something that you
Mhm.
didn't mean at all.
Right.
And so they're going through life, or going through the day or the week, thinking you meant something that you didn't mean.
Yeah.
And unless you talk about that, you don't realize that.
Right. And in my line of work, this is what we call a repair. When you recognize that
Mm.
something has been done that could be hurtful or misinterpreted or internalized, you need to go back to your child, say you're sorry, and repair that. It's when those things happen over and over again and there's no repair that the child then holds on to it, internalizes it, and then takes it throughout the rest of their lives. So I remember in graduate school, we were talking about this topic, and I had a flashback to something that happened with me and my eldest daughter. And I came home in tears begging for her forgiveness. And she's like, Mommy, I don't even remember that. And it's okay, I forgive you. But I knew that if I had not said it out loud to her,
Mm.
that it would have eaten me up.
Right. And I
Mm.
have actually apologized to my kids for things that happened years before. And maybe when it happened, I was like too ashamed to acknowledge it, but like I couldn't let it go. But most of the times when you do that, they have already moved on.
Yeah.
You're the one who's still carrying it.
Who's
So,
holding it.
yeah. Now, in your book, you talk about the 4 different parenting styles: the helicopter, the tiger, the lenient, and the friend. Which one are you?
I am more the friend.
Mm-hmm.
My daughter and I talk almost every day,
Mm-hmm.
and she tells me more than I need to know, or
Uh-huh.
more than I want
Really?
to
Uh-huh.
know. Oh, yes, yes. So but it stems from we have the type of relationship that I had with my mom.
Mm-hmm.
So I was my mom's only child, and my mom and I were best friends.
Mm-hmm.
And I told her everything. I talked to her every day till she was 88, till she passed at 88. And but with my daughter Lauren, even though I say we're friends, I am not opposed to flipping the script and
Mm-hmm.
being mom and
Mm-hmm.
Right.
saying, and remind her who she's talking to when
Right.
she kind of forgets.
Yeah.
So and that's what I talk about in my book. You can be friends with your kids, but you also have to know when it's time to be mom, right?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And to be that parent
Right.
and to lay down the rules and the
Mm-hmm.
foundation and the
Mm-hmm.
framework
Mm-hmm.
and the consequences when they do something that
Right.
they're not supposed to be doing. So
Right.
there's a balance.
Right. I don't think I was my mother's friend until I was about 37.
To be exact, 37 to be exact. Now, why did you have to
37.
say 37?
Yeah, because I was done having kids, but she can still kind of slip back into the wait, I'm your mother, and she can still pull out a look on me, and
Yeah.
I kind of fall back into line at age 56.
Yeah. And
She's always going to be your mother.
Yeah.
I remember I'm thinking of one client in particular who a young girl who was sharing that her mother was her friend, too much so that it was unhealthy and crossed boundaries.
Right.
And
Mm,
for a young woman to be able to say, yeah, I don't want to hear that from my mother, and the mother not even acknowledging or recognizing that that might be inappropriate for your 13-year-old daughter, um, that was a struggle. And I had to work. The young child was my client, not the parent, but I also had to share with mom that there need to be appropriate adult child boundaries, and that your daughter is not your friend the way you're going to talk to your girlfriend about what's going on in
right.
your life.
Right.
Right.
And yeah, I can, it's flashing back right now, that whole situation. um so I like the idea of being friends with your children, but knowing that it's a healthy friendship
Right.
and not
Yes.
an inappropriate, oh, you're my girlfriend, I can tell you
Right.
everything sort of thing, because that's
Right.
never going to work.
There's a different, it's not a girl, right. There's an age difference,
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
and friends where you have this open relationship, and your child feels comfortable that they can trust you and tell you everything and anything. But as a parent, you're not going to do, you're not going to do the same and tell them about all your relationships and what you're
Right.
doing and you're
Right.
going out,
Right.
Right.
and which sounds like what that woman was
Yes.
doing with
Yes.
her 13-year-old.
And my 23-year-old daughter, she made mention of another person her age who drinks and parties with her mom. And she's like, yeah, you and I will never ever do that.
You won't be taking shots with Maxine.
Like,
And I'm like, that's okay, because I don't need to be your friend like
Right.
that. I
Right.
don't need that in our
right,
relationship
right.
for it to be a strong, committed bond between the two of us. So no, we're not going to be
Right,
doing
right.
shots.
What type of parent do you think you are?
Um, whew, I don't know. When I think of parenting, Dr. Liz, I think of the authoritarian, the authoritative, the
Mm,
permissive. Those are like the terms that I think of when
mhm.
in regards to parenting. And I think I'm more of the authoritative parent, where
Okay.
I'm willing to listen to my children and engage in dialogue with them, but I'm not going to tell them what they have to do. I will certainly make suggestions to the best of my ability. And it also depends on the age of your child,
Mhm.
right? Like when
Mhm.
they're little,
Yes.
you're going to have to tell them. But when they're
Right.
adolescents, I can no longer tell them. I go from the manager to the consultant. So I can
Yes.
provide support, encouragement. But hmm, I think if I'm looking at Dr. Liz's four categories, I would have to say I am more of the friend um, that
You can be a
sometimes,
combination.
Mhm.
right, that sometimes want to be a bit of the helicopter to make sure like everything is taken
Mhm.
care of for them, but recognizing I have to pull back and let them do that for themselves. Yeah, so I think between the friend and with a thrown in bit of helicopter. How about
Mhm.
you?
Mhm.
I am I feel I'm a little bit of a tiger mom in the sense that I don't tell them what to do, but they use me as a model. So they use me as kind of the benchmark. And so they like Haley has said, Haley's my eldest, and she
Mhm.
said that just growing up in my house, she knows that she has to achieve at a high level. I don't force them to achieve, but like if I see them on that path, I will encourage them. But I don't, my love for them is not conditional
Hmm.
on how well they do in school. I think I'm also a friend, but each child needs something different.
Right.
Yes.
So, yeah, tiger, maybe a tiger bomb, a little
Tiger
bit,
Bomb.
a little bit,
A
um,
little bit thrown
a
in
little
there.
bit of tiger
Uh-huh.
bomb, but
Uh-huh.
yeah, it's not like a conditional type thing. But you also mentioned in the book that sometimes kids feel like if they mess up, you're going to stop loving them.
Oh.
And I
Yes.
remember one time my son, he was about 7, and he was kind of testing me. Mommy, would you love me if I didn't do well in school? Yes. Would you love me if I did this? And then he asked me, would you love me if I went to jail? He's
Oh, he was
7.
Yeah.
really testing you.
Yeah.
And I said, of course, Boogie, I would love you. I may not love what you did, but I'm always going to love you. And that concept blew his mind. He was, to him at 7, going to jail was like the worst thing ever.
Right.
But it shocked him when I said I would still love him.
Right. Yeah.
So
No,
go ahead, Liz. Were you going to say something?
no. Go
Okay.
ahead. Go ahead.
You tell a story in the book about when you didn't have a car and
Mhm.
your mother had to take a cab to drop you off at softball practice, and you asked her to drop you off 2 blocks away so people wouldn't see you pulling up in a cab. Can you talk about why kids feel so embarrassed about their parents? What is that?
I just think it's ingrained in childhood that
Hmm.
you always you're looking at the grass is always greener, so
Uh-huh.
you're looking at how other people grow up, and like I grew up in a small house, and I'm looking at other people, and they had bigger houses, and they had cars, so you're always comparing yourself
Hmm.
Hmm.
with other people. And even now with social media,
Right.
Oh yeah.
Heightened.
Yeah.
it's exponential, right?
Right. Right.
And you're comparing yourself to what you see on social media, which is not necessarily true
Hmm.
Right.
either. So I think it's always going to be that way, and every generation is going to be embarrassed about their parents. And it's, as parents, we should just realize that our kids are going to be embarrassed. We're not always going to be that cool parent,
Hmm.
and we just need to do what needs to be done to really have them thrive.
Right.
And
Yeah.
yeah, you're not always going to be cool.
Right. I remember one time when I would drop the kids off, my eldest stopped holding my hand when she was about 4. But I would drop them off and give them a kiss, and then my son stopped wanting to receive a kiss on the cheek. So I said, "You don't give me a kiss on the cheek, I will embarrass you." So he got out of the car, and I wound down my window and I yelled, "Make good choices! Mommy loves you!"
Lord.
And then, and then after that, he would give me a kiss on the cheek just so he wouldn't be embarrassed.
Oh, that's funny.
But it's also because kids, as kids get older, they want more. They want more autonomy, and it's just part
Right.
of their
Yes.
developing process. And as they're gaining more autonomy and separating, they're going to want to separate from parents,
Right.
and we as parents don't want them to separate. So
Right.
we're like, come here, let me give you a hug, let me give you a kiss. I'm like, no.
Right. And I was thinking that it's natural and it's healthy for that child to separate, individuate from their parent. That is, we want that for our children so they can be more prepared and ready to step out on their own. So when we're trying to smother them and they're trying to push back, that pushback is a normal and natural thing. And we need to let them push back from us so they can discover who they are. This stage of life in adolescence, Eric Erickson calls it identity versus role confusion. They need to figure out who they are separate and apart from their parents in order to help them successfully move to that next developmental stage.
And
So,
that's easier said than done.
yeah,
No kidding.
yeah,
For
yeah,
parents.
yeah.
Yes, I
I know
and
for me.
and believe me, I know it. I know it. But I know that I can't do therapy in my own home. My daughter once told me, "Stop therapizing me, mommy." I cannot do therapy in my home, even though I know all of this stuff. Yeah, it's
Now, as kids are separating from their parents, they tend to isolate more in their room, not really want to talk to you, and then they get so busy with activities at school that they don't eat dinner with you. They come home, they go into their room, and they're kind of, separating. But how do you differentiate normal adolescent behavior from depression?
Mm. Well, that's where it's so vital for parents to really be in tune with their
Mhm.
kids, because you have a baseline of who they are and their normal activities. So it's whenever things are out of whack. So if your child used to be upbeat, and even if they're in their room but they're upbeat and confident, and then now they're sad, or they're not hanging out with their friends, or any changes, if you're in tune, you get a sense of their baseline and who they are and what their normal behavior is. So when they're depressed, or if there's something unusual outside the normal teenage moodiness,
Mhm.
you would be able to detect that if there was a change in behavior. All of a sudden, they're not just in their room more, but they're sad. They're not talking. They're not communicating with their friends. They're not doing their normal activities. So any change from the normal teen baseline.
Mhm.
Uh, and I know Judy, you may have more comments on that, since this is your line of work that you see every day.
yeah. I had actually written down um, that we know our children better than anybody else. We know what's normal, quote unquote, for them versus what is
Mm-hmm.
not. And we need to trust that instinct. And I believe that if you sense that something is off with your child, something is. I know when I speak to my children on the phone, like, wait, hey, how's it going? Oh, I'm okay. No, something's up. I can hear it in your voice. And I think as a parent, if you trust that instinct and then follow up with that, that's going to be your best bet, as opposed to letting the children flounder. We need to be in tune to hear them. Yeah.
That's great. And not be afraid to, if you think something is wrong, to go to a professional.
Right.
Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely.
A lot of times parents see that as a weakness, or that people are going to comment on their parenting if they have to take their child to see a therapist or a psychiatrist. But I tell parents that it's not a weakness. It's actually a strength, because you're doing all that you can to be the best parent that you can be.
And, part of this podcast for us is to normalize mental health and to take it seriously and recognize when you need a little support. And we all need a little extra support at different times in our lives.
Or
so why not give it to
a
our
lot
kids?
of support.
Or a lot of support.
Yeah. Liz, we are empty nesters. How do you still parent when your child is out of the house and technically an adult? What's your approach?
Well, it's difficult because I tend to have to stop myself, because I tend to often want to tell Lauren what to do and how to do it. And she quickly shuts down and shuts off when I say, you might want to, oh, forget about it. You're not listening to me. So it's gently providing. First, I often ask, do you want my suggestion, or are you just talking because you want to vent? Because sometimes she just wants to vent and talk, and she doesn't want my suggestion or opinion at all.
Right.
So often I may ask that. So how do you want me to listen? Are you just want me to listen, or do you want my opinion?
Yeah.
And if she wants my opinion, then I'll, give her several guidance things that I want to guide her with, or several steps. And she'll either take it or leave it. Sometimes she leaves it and says, okay, thank you. I'm not going to do that.
Right.
I'm not going to do that. That was stupid. I'm not going to do that. I don't know why I even asked you.
Thank you, Dr. Liz, for joining us on this edition of Tusoka, Two Sisters of a Certain Age. I mean, I think we really just scratched the surface.
Oh, yeah. We could talk about this with you for hours. There is so much to parenting, but we're just so appreciative of the book that you have, You Are Not a Bad Parent, that helps to guide parents in understanding a little bit more about their adolescent.
Now, Liz's book is available on Amazon, and the audiobook has come out. So please go to Amazon and buy the written copy or the audio version, and you can learn how to appropriately parent your child while you're driving to work.
Again, her name is Elizabeth Henry, MD. You Are Not a Bad Parent.
We have had a wonderful discussion about 50 and Fabulous Woman today. And we want to thank you for listening to Tusoka. Don't forget to like, share, and comment.
And please remember that we would love to hear from you. So any comments or questions or ideas that you might have, please go ahead and write to us at tusokapodcast@gmail.com. And remember, if you've ever had an adolescent,
we can relate.